Good morning and welcome to the webinar for balance and self-care in the workplace. Before I start, we're operating off of YouTube and Slido. Please sign on to the Slido. If you're on the YouTube, you'll see it just a little bit below the screen. Click on that. It'll allow you to participate. We will have it has the ability to do questions and answers and polls and be a part of it digitally as well. Okay, to start, thank you for attending, and to give acknowledgement to the Lekwungen territories. We have 4 presenters today. We have Tolu speaking on working moms, Shay speaking on anxiety, myself on burnout, and Stephanie on leadership. So before I go to Shay to talk about OCMI, we have a survey at the end of this presentation. Please take a moment to fill it out. It really helps us know what works, what didn't work, what you want to hear in the future. It helps us plan out our whole year of scheduling. So, to Shay.
Thanks. I really just wanted to take a quick second to describe kind of what brought us here. And ultimately, our organization gets called out for volunteer requests all of the time at certain conferences, and one of the big ones we participate in is the CNCF, or the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. And associated with them is a group called the Open Source Mental Illness Group, which is a nonprofit organization, and they've been showing up at these conferences and partnering with the CNCF to help provide collateral on how to take care of yourself at a conference, which can be very, very overwhelming. And ultimately, there was some government employees that had saw me volunteering at the booth and started looking at what OSMI was doing at that sort of conference, talking about and hosting panels around wellness and life balance and sort of mental health in the tech industry. And so this sort of conversation spawned out of that. And so I'd like to thank Ari and the group here for the opportunity to, share a few of our stories and open the conversation. I'm going to pass it over to Tolu now, and we're going to get into a few, story sharing of ourselves with a few polls as well that we're going to go through as we move along.
Thanks, Shay. So I have a diagram up, or rather a picture up, and it's a low battery. So how many of us get very panicky when we have our batteries low? So that's the same thing that applies to us as individuals as well. Self-care is a priority, not a luxury. So when we are not fully optimized, or power is running low, or a battery is not receiving any charge, or we have bad days that far outweigh the good days, then that's an opportunity for us to recharge. So we hear the word self-care a lot. We hear the word work-life balance. What does that really mean? So self-care, in my opinion, is where we advocate for ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, daily. So basically, you're looking out for yourself, making sure that you're at your optimum best. And so my story, so I'm a change agent, I'm a Scrum Master, I'm responsible for helping to build high-performing teams. I'm also a mother. I have 3 young kids. I have, my oldest is on the autism spectrum, he's high-functioning. I'm responsible for leading emotional conversations at work. I guide teams away from bad behaviors and learning. I'm also a mother. I volunteer in my church. So I have all these multiple hats or responsibilities that I juggle, and they do get overwhelming. And I've had postnatal depression twice, after 2 pregnancies, my first and my second pregnancy. And even just looking at dishes in the sink would be an overwhelming moment for me. And there have been instances where I've not known what to do, or how to manage, or how to cope. And then I started doing some more research around that, and started, trying to discover what self-care meant, what having a work-life balance meant. And I came to the realization that if I don't look after myself, then I can't look after others. I can't be my best as an employee. I can't be my best as a team lead. I can't be my best as a mother. I can't be my best as a friend, or as a wife, or as as any person. So I can't be my optimum best if I don't look after myself. So that's where self-care came into being. And I've found different strategies that have worked for me that may not necessarily work for everyone. But what's worked for me best is find my Christian faith, first of all, and that sense of hope, or the sense of having a strong belief system as well. That's been great for me as well. A sense of purpose and my relationship with God, that's been a really great strategy for this helped me. A support system as well, very instrumental. That no judgment zone, people that you can speak to when you feel overwhelmed or you feel that you need someone else's opinion, so you don't feel like you're walking this path alone, because it does get busy. As a professional, as a wife, juggling all these many hats, it gets overwhelming. And then also finding time for me. So that me time is super, super important. So things that make you happy, if it's exercise, if it's retail therapy, that works for you. If it's just spending time alone, going to watch a movie, in the morning, just getting up before everyone else and just having that quiet time where you're alone with your thoughts and you're able to just plan for your day. Those are different things that have helped me along my journey. And I haven't quite, figured it all out. I'm still in that journey of trying to figure things out. But these are the things that have helped. And even medication as well. There are times I've had to use medication because it was prescribed by the doctor. I fought against it initially, but then when I did take the medication, I felt a sense of relief from depression and panic attacks. So different things work for different people, but I think it's really just finding out what works for you and what brings you joy. And then even a sense of gratitude as well, where you're just grateful for the little things. Waking up in the morning, you're grateful. So that's been really helpful for me as well. Meditation as well. And even in the workplace as well, having a supportive manager has been super, super helpful. Where there's an environment of trust, having team members as well that are supportive has been extremely helpful. That's not always the case in every situation, but definitely it's super helpful as well. And this allows you to thrive as an individual and not just survive. And then going away to recharge. If you have to take a weekend away or just a day away from everything else, or a mental health day, as we like to say, because when we're sick, we take sick days, right? So it's important that we look after our mental health as well. And what we're trying to do here is really try to break the stigma around mental health. So if it's okay to feel overwhelmed, it's okay to actually vocalize that and talk to someone if you feel that, you're taking on too much. It's okay to say no as well. Okay, so I'll hand off to... So I was just going to round up on a quick quote that I found speaks to me on many levels. And it's a quote by Marianne Williamson, a return from a book she wrote, A Return to Love. I'll read that really quickly. And it says, "Dear working mom." And this doesn't just apply to moms, it applies to dads, individuals, single, married, like whoever. So you can just personalize this. And it says that our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It's our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, or fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You're a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We're all meant to shine as our children do. So we're born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. And as we're liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. All right, so I'll hand off to Shay.
Thank you so much. So I think I bring a bit of a different story that I'm going to kind of walk through than Tolu's experience, but I think a lot of what she said about kind of how we can balance our lives and kind of check in on ourselves is really, really important and definitely relates as to kind of my journey as well. I do a lot of tech stuff. trying to, continuing to build a company today, but also love to be outdoors and connected with nature, and I'll get into that in a bit of a second. So I'm going to go kind of in the journey of early days. It was very common for me to burn 80-plus hour weeks throughout my life. And so, in college, I was doing 40 hours a week of in-class, which nets out to about another 20 hours a week of actual homework. I was doing a 40-hour-a-week job. I was trying to have a college life, which is about 3 to 4 hours of partying a night, which nets out about 4 hours of sleep. And on that sort of work stress thing, there was two things that kept me alive. That was cigarettes and Coca-Cola. And that was pretty much what I was feeding myself to stay alive. And ultimately, that didn't really work out so well for me. And really in these early days around college and around sort of my first job, I kind of had this ego that sat with me a lot about always wanting to provide more, and that, you always just had to have this sort of bravado around maybe not taking care of myself and just giving everything I could and showing that I was always doing stuff. And I was kind of stuck in that little bit of a hype. And this is actually where I started to first experience anxiety, though I didn't know really what to call it. And, ultimately I went, talked to a doctor, 4 sentences or less, I ended up with some medication. That didn't really jive with me so well. And so I kind of went off of that and really kind of ignored sort of the next level of anxiety and kind of just left it there. So that was sort of the first experience. But another thing I'd started was kind of looking at burnout and what that looks like. And in the early days of your first job, when you're, 24/7 tech guy, I'm the only person in the country to call for support. I'm doing 3 a.m. maintenance windows all the time. You don't really think about taking care of yourself because you're building your career, and you just think it's the thing that has to be done. And nobody's really talking about what you're doing to recharge, or taking your days in lieu or flex days and things like that. And so I pivoted out of that sort of stage of my life, and I moved into tech sales. And tech sales had a bit of a different pivot in that it had a flashy, attractive element of fun. Hey, I can go to Vegas, I go to conferences, I'm going to go out and socialize, I'm going to be building relationships with people, and I still have to do my day job. And the net result was the same thing. It was still 4 hours of sleep a night, regardless of how it was getting spent. And to what Tolu was saying, my battery was just depleted every single day, which also means my work wasn't the best that it could be. And I was also eating out at restaurants and just having, again, a bad physical sort of, aspect to my life with a poor diet, gaining weight, feeling tired, feeling slowly. And that was, really, really challenging for me in that it's very difficult to realize from the inside. And so I was burning out, but I burned out in a really slow way. And so it wasn't sort of any huge impactful moment. It was more the fact that my colleagues started asking me to take vacation, right? And so when people start to ask you to, and I was proud that I had never taken a vacation in so many years, and I, in hindsight, kind of ridiculous, but again, that ego was coming up and saying, I don't take vacation, I work all the time. That ends up on people saying, no, you're tired. You may not see it. You need to go, take some time. And I can't see the poll question, but I think there's a poll coming up, particularly about potentially burnout and how maybe you've experienced that. If, did you feel it yourself? Did somebody else maybe bring it to your attention? Was it external factors or internal ones? And in myself, my loving and caring friends had actually forced me on vacation. They sent me away. And so that was a big opener for me to go, okay, maybe I need to start thinking about what's going to be sustainable for me. But I wasn't quite there yet. And so, I moved into starting a company. I left that other world of sales and high energy but low sleep into a world of just all work while you're trying to do things like solo consulting. So, small company, every minute is billable for me if we want to actually, be able to keep our mortgages. And at the same time, you're trying to grow a team. And so you're trying to hire new people and also show them that it doesn't have to be as crazy as it is for you, but you're the owner, so you should be putting in twice as much work. And that was sort of the initial thought that was in my head as well. I was traveling all the time. There was times when I was in 3 different cities in a week, and I did not know what hotel I was waking up in or what city I was in at times. But it was fun, and the energy was super high. But at the same time, my battery kept on depleting, and I felt like maybe over 12 years, 13 years, I'm just stuck in this cycle of the same sort of energy loss. And how do you get out of it? And ultimately, I think, what I've come to a couple years into the organization, and about 14 months ago, I started to feel anxiety again in a really real way, and it felt like it had felt when I was 19 again. And for me, that was just a point to recognize and to slow down and to start focusing on self-care and sustainability. And I think that's kind of where my head goes. How am I going to also lead the team that I'm with and teach them how to recharge their battery if I can't recharge my own? And my brain now likens this to my cell phone battery, right? Every time it gets near depleted, I freak out. Well, that's, we started charging our phones all the time, every day. And I think the same thing needs to happen when we're in the workplace. We still like to work really hard and have a lot of fun, but you also have to take the downtime moments and recharge. And so I started exploring meditation. I started exploring yoga. I went on a solo trip across Thailand and did like a meditation retreat. I started doing sort of mental health wellness retreats. I took a lot of vacation. And that's, to show the team that they should as well, but for me personally, just to come back with a renewed and re-energized sort of look at the way I was approaching my work. And that whole transition over 14 months, I think, has completely changed my personality and my outlook on work-life balance and what that means. And I feel like I'm not bringing everything I can to work if I don't have this sort of outside, external, well-balanced, healthy lifestyle. And that comes with exercise and fun activities and good diet and those types of things as well. But it also adds the other element that as a business owner I became acutely aware of, which I hadn't seen before, using all my benefits and like as many as I can. And I max out my massage therapy right now quite a bit. I'm interested in exploring acupuncture. I've maxed out psychotherapy and talk therapy because I started talking to my friends about this and found value in my mental health by talking to somebody about it. And so I think there might be another poll coming up, just looking at your benefits and how do you use them, or do you use them at all? And I spent a good part of 12 years not using my benefits, and now I realize as somebody who pays for them, as a business owner, that's a massive loss for me as an employee. So yeah, that's just a little bit of the journey through time, a different level of sort of experiencing burnout in a very slow and unobvious way, but also looking at anxiety and changing my relationship with it by taking proactive steps. So yeah, that's a bit of my story. Thanks for listening. I'm going to pass it over to Stephanie.
Oh, I'll just leave it here. Do you have your own?
Yes.
You're next, I think, right? Oh.
My talk's on burnout. I moved back to Victoria from Calgary in 2012. In 2013, I decided to start my own small speaker agency, One Day Health and Wellness Festival, and be the media coordinator and lead speaker coach for TEDx Victoria. The years prior, for over 8 years, I was director of customer relations as well as a speaker agent for New York Times bestselling authors, comedians and athletes, and some famous sports people. And I loved it. It was great work. It taught me a lot of skill set, and I felt that skill set would allow me to build a strong, small speaker agency of my own, as well as I saw a gap in the health market, and I thought by adding a conference in Victoria and a beta, by testing it out year in, year out for 3 years, if it worked out, I could bring it across Canada, and TEDx Victoria was dear to my heart, so I thought I'd do all 3. And it was a lot of work. Similar to Shay, I was working all the time, and I loved it. It's fun. Like if you've ever done that type of work, it's kind of like a high. There's always learning, there's always excitement, there's always something to figure out. And the first year was great. The Health and Wellness Festival went well. We had over 1,200 people attend the one-day event in Victoria Conference Center. TEDx Victoria, it was the first year we'd moved it to the McPherson Theatre. It had been at the Victoria Conference Center, so We doubled the audience and sold it out. Yay. And the speaker agency worked. So those were all big wins. And second year comes in, and I've been speaking to mentors. I love working with mentors, and they'd all shared the same. It's like, when things go well, you will feel more pressure. And I thought, no. If I have success in the first year, it's going to be more fun because I've done it. But it rang true. I felt way more pressure in the second year because I saw the things that could work, and I realized, well, if those can work, I can go further. And it was still fun, but I really felt the pressure. And so the second year, event worked really well. It had 2,000 people come in for the one-day event, and sponsorship grew to $30,000. Vendors, we had 60 vendors. The speaker agency grew nicely, and TEDx Victoria sold out again. Yay. And shortly after the event, I remember sitting with a buddy at Mole for breakfast, and I don't know why he shared the story with me, because I don't know if I felt it at all, but he's just like, he told me his story of burnout. He had had a couple of tech companies. He'd sold one a few years before and done well with that, and he was working on selling the next one right now. And he started telling me about how he burnt out and how he didn't see the signs at the time, and then all of a sudden it hit him. And looking at him, I was like, he kind of looks like a Viking compared to me. I do not look like a Viking. I'm quite wiry. And I was like, how could a Viking type body type get that? But at the same time, I don't think I can get that. I really valued his talk, but I just thought I was invincible. But then I started thinking about it, and I realized that my memory was not working for things like it should, like the grocery cart. I constantly lost my grocery cart at Root Cellar. And I started thinking that was normal, and I started asking friends, hey, do you lose your grocery cart every time you're at the grocery? And then they're like, occasionally. They were kind, good friends. But I noticed that my memory was slipping, and that was the first thing that I noticed. And so then the third year comes, the speaker agency is working fine, TEDx is great, and the one-day health and wellness festival tanked. It had less than half the people that attended the year before. And also, I remember even being at the day of the event, and one of my sponsors says to me, you don't look that good. And we kind of laughed. It's like I'm the front of a health event, and I look beat. But I didn't know it until after. Now that the event finally didn't work, it was crushing, but it gave me a chance to sit still for a while at home as I closed it down to realize that I was exhausted. And I took the steps to cut my hours drastically to semi-human hours compared to what I was doing, and rethink about where my life was. And 10 months later, I took a position, a TA position in the government for Data BC, and I loved it. Because I love the high of working, but it was really neat to know that I needed parameters. I needed a 9-to-5 job for my personality that said, come in at 8:30 and leave at 5 and take your weekends off. Like, I hadn't taken weekends in years. And I really value that because I can put all my passion and energy into this 9-to-5 work here and work a little extra here and there, but it's not the default to work weekends, to work late into the evening. And with this, I've also taken even more time to get into more acupuncture, more walks, more like breathing and meditation. All these things have been so helpful, and I've been fortunate that I can find the grocery cart now.
Should I use this one? Hi there. My name's Stephanie, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about psychological safety. So I found this graph on the internet because I wanted to talk about how it's been for me in having leaders that don't provide psychological safety and the difficulty that has been for me. I'm probably a type AA personality, or can be, and so I really want to perform. It's really important to me, like the others that you've heard here today. It's super important for me to be effective, to be efficient, to show value all the time. All the time, not just once in a while, but all the time. Every day I'm thinking, okay, what have I done for the citizen today? And so I need to be in an environment where I can be successful and I can feel that my energy is being put to good use. And I think that probably in the past 20 years in government, I've had, unfortunately, a fair few leaders, my supervisors, that didn't provide a safe environment. And that was super stressful. You can see that on the graph, those things that are really important, you can change them to what makes sense for you. It can't just be safety, it has to be accountability and motivation as well. We need clear roles and responsibilities. There has to be good boundaries, compelling vision, honesty, and appreciation. Those things are very important. You know, in how it manifested in me is that I just kept trying harder or pushing harder or wanting to do more, and without the ability of clearly the leader saying, this is how you can help the team, this is where you provide value. Those things are really important in order for individuals to feel successful. And when I didn't feel successful, it was really hard for me to get up and get into work and not have that anxiety that I'm underperforming and that I'm not delivering, or there's not clarity on what I should be doing. And honesty is such an important part of that. And a couple of times in the roles that I've had, I got to a point where, I was having to go to counseling all the time. That was very, very helpful for me. But to try and get support, reaching out to my peers, trying to figure out how I can provide that value that I need to be able to provide every day. So I think that psychological safety is something that leaders really have to, put some energy and time into figuring out. This is a little saying that I came up with: look after the people and the work gets done, look after the work and the people are done. Because I realized through many years that if I just focused on the work, or my boss just focused on the work and not on me and not on the team, that it really felt empty. Like, the people are done, they will be done, they'll be done with you, they'll be done with you if you don't really pay attention to the people. So psychological safety can bring us to having less fear. Less fear means more mistakes, more innovation, better solutions. Often as leaders, we don't focus enough on the ability for our team to make mistakes. What do mistakes look like? What is making a mistake more regularly and being able to talk about that? What about sharing our mistakes? I share my mistakes all the time with my team. Oh, well, when I was in this situation, this happened, and, it was a big issue and a blow up, and, I felt bad about that, but I've moved on from that, and I learned from that. And I share that so that my team can learn from that or take from that what they may, or they may not, and that's okay too, because my team needs to make their own mistakes and learn from those themselves. And without those mistakes, we can't be innovative, we can't drive towards better solutions. Everybody's ideas really make a difference, and sorry, I'm laughing because I'm looking at the let it go. This is something I've learned so much in my career. I'm not going to sing. I do sing this sometimes, but I'm not going to sing it right now. It is so important for me to let go of all of those past experiences where I've had poor leadership. Just let it go. I've just moved on. I've learned so much from that. And I've also learned that I have to let go. Being a type A personality in my early management years, I was very value-focused, very pushing forward, digging into the how. How are you doing that? Not sticking to the what and the why. What are we doing and why? Coming up with that compelling vision. And then, I had to learn, don't get into the how. Don't tell people how to do their jobs. It's so important because that's what lets individuals make their own decisions on how they're going to do their job. And that's what creates innovation. And that's where you understand the problem together the best. It's our job as leaders to understand what that is and make sure that what we're solving makes sense. So I'd say that's probably been one of the most important lessons I've learned, and that reduces the stress on my team and the anxiety on my team and provides the safety, because not only can they make their own decisions about how to solve the problem that they're tasked with doing, but it also makes it okay for them to make a mistake in that too, because we can all support each other and recover from that. Whatever it is, we'll get through it together. And so that's been really, and also letting go of having everything need to go through me. So as a leader, in order to promote a high-performing team, one of the things that has been stressful for me in the past is if I forget to go to my supervisor to ask permission for certain things or many things, or making sure that I'm always bringing the right information up. And then if I forget to do that and then feeling the stress and anxiety of that, or that I've somehow made a mistake or a misstep or stepped on somebody's toes, I always feel horrified about that because I never want to embarrass anybody or step outside of things, but I've let that go. So sorry to my bosses that past and future, that I haven't always checked in everything on, but in order to feel empowered, for each team member to be empowered, they have to be able to go and talk to who they want to talk to. They have to be able to find out what they need to know to get their particular job done. So I've let go of that, and it's an awesome feeling. I super recommend that. And that way, your team can be that high-performing web of making sure that they're moving forward all the time. So this safe environment, I think, really does build confidence and capacity in the team. I've seen it over and over in the past number of years that when we all create that safe environment, that people start to shine. When we as leaders don't do all the talking, we should never be doing all the talking. The team members that are passionate and solving that problem and figuring out how to do that, they should talk about it. That reduces their anxiety and increasingly builds their confidence and makes sure that they can continue to perform at the level that they want to perform at. And usually that really matters to people. This is my team right now, one of my teams right now, and we have a lot of fun. We laugh, we work hard, but we have a very supportive environment. Any one of these awesome high-performing team members can speak to what we're doing and the problems we're trying to solve and being on the leading edge. So I guess what I would say is that one of the things that's worked really well for me in the work environment is making sure you have, or I have, a strong community at work. So I spend time making personal efforts to form relationships with people, taking the time to talk with people and getting to know people, and sharing part of myself, being able to bring my whole self to work. That's what I find really engaging, and I want my team to be able to bring their whole selves to work. So I always encourage them to, if people are sick, that they need to stay home and look after themselves. It's very stressful when people have a sick child or when people have young children. And as an organization, it's really good to try and always be supportive of people in whatever situation they're having. And we need to just completely let go of all that old school mantra of, we have to be at work every day no matter what. And those are the people that are shiners. It's really the people that are looking after themselves and that feel supported and take that time. I think those are the people that are able to shine all the time, because they can feel safe to bring themselves to work, their whole selves to work. Thanks.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Hey, thanks all of you. Thanks for sharing.
We have two questions, but before we go to questions, one of your slides really resonated. Could you go back to the scalar graph for motivation and accountability?
Sure.
Thanks. Okay, we have two questions so far. Please ask more questions. The first one is from Dave. It's for Tolu. How do you think being a part of a community helps, and would you consider it separate from your faith practice?
So repeat that.
How do you think being part of a community helps, and would you consider it separate from your faith practice?
So community in the sense of, okay, I'm just going to assume there, because I'm not sure what when they say community, but community in terms of like the Nigerian community, because I'm Nigerian, my ethnic background is Nigerian. So just having people that understand and can resonate what I'm going through in a no judgment zone. In a no judgment zone, I apologize, I was looking at Ari. In a no judgment zone, my faith has helped as well because I'm Christian. I have a personal relationship with God. So the prayers, the meditation, that's been very helpful for me as well. And then just adding to the faith as well, I think it's also that sense of a higher purpose, or, a purpose-driven life. So I like to be intentional about the things I do. And I like to be self-aware as well. So even knowing what my limitations are as an individual. So I'm very, very self-aware. I'm that person that would have that retrospective or introspective about things. Okay, where did I actually go wrong? Or what did I do? Or what could I have done better? So I'm very good with talking to myself, like self-awareness, self-talking. And I think that's because I've also spent time understanding who I am, and then even loving myself as well. So I come with all, I'm not perfect. So I have warts and all, right? But then in all of that, I know that I know what my strengths are. I know what my weaknesses are. I'm very aware of those, and I do my best to manage them. But definitely, my Christian faith has been very helpful for me. And when I say community, for me, it's also being part of like a religious group like my church. That's a safe place. Very, very, very similar to what Stephanie mentioned about that safe place or that psychological safety at work in my community as well. Just having that psychological safety, knowing that you can express yourself without fear of being condemned or judged, or, it's like owning my own truth and not feeling criticized or judged about it. I really hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Second question, we can all take turns on it, or one person to start. It's from Karan. If you can approach creating an organization that has psychological safety embedded in collaboration, what would be your first steps?
If you don't mind, I'll start as
Please.
One sort of offering. This is actually, it's interesting because the organization that we run, it runs a little bit differently, but there are elements to the way that our meetings start to a technique that I learned on one of sort of a retreat that I went on. where we were learning how to get in touch with emotions and expressing ourselves a little better in a safer space. And really what we do is we call this checking in. And so at the beginning of every meeting that we have, and we have quite a lot of what we call tactical meetings, is we just do a check-in. It's as simple as checking in with myself physically or emotionally, just to say every 10 or 15 seconds where I'm at and how I'm entering the meeting. And so as a good example, I might come in and say, I'm feeling a little bit nervous about a presentation that I have later on today, and I'm kind of hungry. Those are two different things that at least provide a little bit of context to everybody else in the room as to where you're coming from. It also allows me to check in with myself so that I know if I'm hungry, I might be less likely to kind of be a little sharp with my emotions, because now I've just acknowledged to myself what state I'm coming to that meeting in. We've found that that just opens up the conversation for context and understanding for everybody that joins that meeting. And that's one super easy way to start with feeling a little more psychologically safe and sort of connected to your peers. Other?
Can I add to that as well? And for me, as a Scrum Master, so psychological safety is absolutely important, especially in the agile world. So even when we come into meetings, just something as simple as a sprint retrospective, where you say whatever is said in retro stays in retro. I mean, we're all familiar with whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right? So it's very similar to even our meetings. So this, just taking that moment at the start of a meeting or a sprint ceremony to let people know that, you know what, this is a safe place. Whatever you say here is safe here. That information isn't going anywhere else. That's also helping to build trust and ensuring that psychological safety. And it's also something you have to demonstrate as an individual as well, right? Because if your team members are, if you're trying to build trust with your team members or your work colleagues, and so whatever they tell you has to stay with you, right? So that's how you also embody the principles that you're trying to teach your team members as well.
I don't know how we're doing for time, because it's not a strength of mine, so just let me know.
18 minutes, and
Okay.
questions are coming in.
Okay, I'll be fast. I think one of the important things for me is to make sure that that I help people be themselves, and that's okay to be yourself. So I definitely focus on making sure that I'm honest and value people, and that I'm authentic in the value that I talk about that the team provides all the time. So it is important that people are able to show up as themselves and be themselves. And I think that's been a long journey for me personally, to just, it's okay to be myself, and nothing bad is going to happen. And it's okay if I make mistakes. It's okay if people make mistakes. And authenticity is another big important part, and that your team, people can tell when you're being honest. So being honest, being able to challenge each other in the team, being able to challenge the leader on the team, those things all build safety, and that's okay. I think it's the diversity that each person brings is what always is going to make us stronger. So I think those are the types of things I'm thinking about all the time to try and continue to have psychological safety.
That was great, and it was succinct.
Thanks, sorry.
Okay, next question. I'm going to pass it to Shay to start this one. Probably have the best answer of us four. How do you recognize burnout, ideally before actually experiencing it? What are some signs to look out for?
I'm only going to speak from personal experience, because that's really all I can share. I do hope in future editions of this we can work with somebody who's qualified to provide some of those details as well. My personal experience was external factors sharing with me that I was burning out. And they weren't saying the words "you were burning out," but kind of grumbling that I wasn't giving them enough time, right? And also identifying that I was tired and my emotional sort of stability had been compromised. I think the OSMI actually has some pretty good literature on the website, and we've got a few links on this. at the end that I think are worth evaluating, both to recognize sort of emotional issues in the workplace for yourself or for others. So for me, it was always tired, not making time for exercising, which is a depleted battery, and really edgy responses to things. So if you pick on things like getting hangry itself can be, if you're not paying attention to that enough and you understand that emotionally you're more snappy when you haven't been fed, well, that can compound itself in a much larger way. So for me personally, if you're trying to get a little proactive to this, I want to go back to the check-in process, but I do that with myself. And so one way to maybe stave it off is to every day just have a 3-minute check-in with yourself. And there are actually apps that do this, and I've used them. We're like, hey, how's it going? It's a question we don't often ask ourselves, and you're like, oh, I'm angry because of whatever reason, I'm tired, I'm whatever. Just because I've taken that moment, I can probably help identify that, hey, I probably need a little bit more rest tonight, and I probably don't need to go out to that social event. But for me, a lot of slowness, dietary type effects, and sort of emotional instability is how I typically register with burnout. And just not wanting to see friends and needing to retreat into my home, and those types of things are like when I'm experiencing it. I'm kind of in it, but also paying attention to everybody around you who might be telling you to take a break. They love you. They probably are paying attention to that.
Do you have any favorite apps?
The one that I've paid attention to particularly for that is called Youper, Y-O-U-P-E-R. I believe it's free. They're just trying to collect the data as well as part of sort of mental health analysis and those types of things. I've used it. It works well for me. And then compared with that, I do use meditation apps and things like that as well, but that's kind of a different thing. The Youper is more about checking in and checking with what your current state of emotional wellness is for the day. And that's it. That's as simple as it is. And it's kind of funny to ask the question to yourself, but I found it incredibly helpful just to take a second and ask myself the question.
I'm with you. I've been using this app called Breathe, and just so I figure out what my mental and physical is, and I can just see it and I'm like, yes, that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah. For me, data helps.
Yeah.
I've also tracked my sleep now, and I do all those other things, not for the data overload, but one of my apps does have a body battery, and it kind of has, sort of how healthy was your sleep last night, what exercise did you get, and what's your heart rate and stress level. And those things combined, it's been dead on when it's like, hey, man, you can't sustain this over a few periods of time. And I've gotten notifications, especially when I'm at conferences, where the app is like, dude, no, like rest, go do something else. And I found that incredibly helpful for myself because that data helps me make better decisions.
Thanks. And to Shay's starting of that, this is just an opening conversation. Fill out the survey. We'd like to go further with this in the future for future webinars, but we want to know what you want. Okay, next question. Great to hear stories. I'm curious to know what tactics or practices you use within the 9 to 5 hours to do self-care. I'll start with mine. I try to go for a walk every day. I could stay at the computer quite easily, but I find the walk helps me be creative, helps me decompress, gives me the energy to go back strong.
I guess for me, I am not very good at self-care. It's been a real struggle for me throughout my career is to try, because I think I'm fine. I think I'm feeling fine until it's too late. So one of the things that actually has been really great for me and my family is to have screen-free nights completely screen-free, and that means everything. No TV, nothing. And that has been surprisingly restorative, like hugely restorative, as well as exercise, because the type of work we're doing now, as most public servants, is we sit at a desk, and that as more and more information comes out, we need to be getting up and moving. So perhaps apps that can help us, remind us to get up and move, or actually just, for me, it would have to be, actually my computer goes off. So I have to get up and do something. But yeah, those things that I have found, that has been super helpful. Completely unplug.
I'd say for myself, Ari, definitely the walks are a big thing for me. I've learned, especially with coding or when you're troubleshooting something, almost the more time you spend at it, the more time you keep repeating the same things that you're doing, and you're like, I need a fresh approach. And every time you walk away for a 10-minute walk to go get a tea or whatever the case is, usually the solution kind of comes to you. In our workplace, because I'm not on a 9-to-5 schedule, so I can work those hours, but I can work out of those hours as well. I try to check in with myself a little bit around energy level and hunger. And so checking in whether I'm hungry and whether I need to be fed. Sometimes I'll take my lunch hour and I'll go for a run, because running for me is quite meditative in an interesting way. Or if I don't have the time for that, I will actually sneak away into a quiet room for 5 minutes and get like a little meditation in for just 5 minutes. And those work for me because it just slows down my brain enough to feel a little bit healthy and to put my mindset outside of the current challenge. And it usually makes me think about what I'm going to do tonight to continue taking care of myself. Our company's done a couple of other things, like trying to keep healthy snacks on hand so people don't have an excuse to be underfed or hungry. And once a week we sort of roll in these yoga things during the day where there's an instructor that comes in and can kind of lead you through a little bit of something that you might not have experience with. So those are a few ways that we've tried to challenge or combat some of that in our work. But lots of new things are coming out as well, and that's just really a starting point.
How do we encourage employees to learn and develop skills to improve their resiliency, and which skills or learning would you recommend?
If this is specific towards self-care and sort of that, like educating yourself on self-care and health and wellness, the first thing I want to point to that we will share on the slide deck are a few resources from OSMI. I mean, they're open source mental illness. They're trying to gather information and publicize them in a way that is very consumable. They're published on LeanPub, so you can pay nothing for them, or you can pay something for them, which of course goes to help fund a lot of the other publications and data that they provide. But it gives you the perspective of from the employee or from the HR professional or from the boss, right? And so I think those are interesting perspectives and helpful resources, just so that if you need to go back to it, it's a good PDF to keep on hand. Further than that, if you want to push further, there are actually mental health courses and like mental health first aid courses and things like that you can take as well. All of those types of resources are available on their website, so I do sort of maybe recommend that as a decent starting point if your organization doesn't already have something published from, let's say, HR or health and safety departments.
I'm currently taking a cognitive behavioral therapy course, and it's a weekly training. I just went to my doctor, asked for it, because it gives you skill sets to understand where you're at all times a day, just to really check in. I've been finding it a fantastic dual combo with the app. It's a really neat resource to have, and it's free.
I was just going to mention that what's built my own resiliency is having difficult experiences, as the ones I've mentioned with my supervisors, and then drawing on that community to try and work through that and getting through that. And so I think the community is super important. Having a community of supports helps build your resiliency from things, because we can lean on each other and depend on each other. I think for far too long I thought I could do everything myself. I thought I could handle it, and I didn't really talk about how I was feeling. I didn't share my experiences, but I think we didn't think that was okay or somehow professional, but I've let that go. I almost say, let it go. And so now I do share those things, and I do talk about that check-in type of thing, and not all the time, and I am really cognizant of helping other people step out, because as they step out, they then build their confidence, and that builds their resilience as well. Because when they've proven to be successful in one situation and they get into another one that maybe breaks them down or makes them feel anxious, they can lean back on those experiences where they have been successful and remember those, and we can help people remember those. And so I think that's been important for my own resilience.
For me, it's self-awareness, just understanding what my limitations are and where those boundaries are too. So just really being able to know when to stop, really.
Next question. What are some techniques available for managing burnout when taking time off is not an option?
I'm happy to.
It's a really hard one.
Again, this is just all from personal experience. I'm not trying to prescribe anything to anybody here. This is just what I found very helpful, because the last sort of 14 months have been really good for me. Understanding that taking time off might not be an option, but introducing certain things into your life can be done in very small and incremental ways. So, you know, for myself, I think Yoda, definitely Yoda meditation. Yoga and meditation together, I do a thing called yin yoga, which is actually a combination of the two, right? It's not high impact. It's about long held stretches in a meditative sort of way. And for me personally, just taking that hour and a half in an evening to take care of myself, and they really, you know, you talk about it when you sit there, like, I brought myself to this is for me. There's nothing else out of this hour and a half that should detract me from taking care of myself, because I am not a doctor, I'm not saving lives, you know, and working too much in just that hour and a half 3 times a week is one way that I was able to give myself the permission to have a little bit of time for myself. And anything that's small and incremental just like that, and that's a really good starting point, is one way. But it might not be that for you. For me, it's also taking a hike on a weekend and just getting out in nature, or doing a little more exercise on the way home. I'm riding my bike to work instead of taking transit, which, you know, I don't know about this city, but transit anywhere tends to be quite frustrating, or you're stuck in traffic, or things like that kind of amp up your stress and add to your burnout. Maybe find alternative ways to kind of reduce that. As a starting point, that's one thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, I had a little bit on that. I'm becoming a fan of yin yoga the last while I get to. It's great because it's so relaxing, and sometimes you even fall asleep if you're tired, and it's fine. It's like a cool thing. It's okay to fall asleep. I also like acupuncture. I find that, but back to Shay, it's incremental for me too.
So just to add to that, I think it's really just finding that one thing that you enjoy doing and then spending that time. So just carving out that me time and then doing that one thing you enjoy doing. It could be exercise, it could be retail therapy, it could be going out to eat on your own. I would gladly go into a cinema and watch a movie on my own, or even just waking up half an hour earlier than the household and then just having that quiet time, your thoughts to yourself. You can plan your day out. So it's little things that we can do. I mean, I know exercise is great, but I also know that trying to add exercise into an already very busy lifestyle is a struggle on its own. So yes, taking a walk during your lunch break. So it doesn't always have to be like really expensive, overly planned things. It could even just be calling that one person that just always makes you laugh. Like I'm very fortunate to have a great support system. So I try to keep far away from bad energy, really, or negative vibes. So I know the people I can call that if I want a quick, to lift up my spirits, I'm feeling low. So just having that one person, that one friend that you can talk to, or that makes you laugh, and then just, helps to make the situation a lot better. So it's not really all about. It's really just finding that thing that you enjoy doing and then finding some time. So it's really so it's being intentional. I think that's the word I'm looking for. Being intentional about making or creating that time to do that thing that you actually enjoy doing.
Can I add one thing?
Sure,
on that?
absolutely.
Just the one thing that comes to mind, I think, with a lot of this is, or at least with me with burnout, was I felt obligated to provide work, and that if I was doing something to recharge myself, that was that was taking away from work, and it was personal, and so it was selfish. I think there's and you feel guilty about it, and you had a slide up there that I think is really important. If you change your mindset a little bit and understand that recharging is making the better version of you for the work you're about to provide, it's part of your job. Like, there's a way to refactor that into, I need to maintain my health and not burn out, because I'm not actually useful to anybody if I do burn out. And so for some people, it might be going, no, me taking an hour off in the middle of the day to go to the gym or whatever, or retail therapy or whatever it is part of you taking care of yourself so you can provide your best work. And I think that's just a slightly different mental look at, it's not selfish, it's actually better for you and better for the people you're working with.
I just want to be cognizant of time. It's 12 o'clock. And I just want to thank Tolu, Shay, Stephanie, and actually special thanks to Shay. He started this. He opened up this conversation to get us into this room today. Again, please fill out the survey. We'd love to take this further in the future, but I want to know what you want. And if you want to hear more of this and how you want to hear this, and we'll see what we can do. So thanks very much for everyone for attending.